Castaway, the role that Tom Hanks was born to play, among others. Forrest Gump is arguably one of the roles Tom Hanks. He definitely has picked roles that fit him. Sheriff Woody was good as well. But enough about that. This is about Tom Hanks' depiction as the castaway lone member of Western civilization, cast away into the elements. And what a movie this is. We have Tom Hanks, basically goes through the full range of emotions of loneliness, despair, sort of wondering what is going to be on the horizon. It's a movie about hope, redemption, and maintaining a spark of humanity throughout the odds. And also, it's a great dystopian movie because it shows the various different elements and aspects of isolation. The famous character in this, who's Tom Hanks' co-star throughout the majority of the film, is a volleyball. The volleyball's name's Wilson, and Wilson steals the show because it really does show you what a person's psychology goes through when struggling with loneliness. And when Tom Hanks is at the end of the film, just sort of crying and wishing that he could, telling Wilson, the volleyball, "I'm sorry, Wilson. I'm sorry. Can you come back?" He's apologizing to the volleyball, at the end of the film, and it's a touching scene, and it brought tears to the eyes of audiences all around the world when this film debuted in the early 2000s. And it's Tom Hanks' War and Peace. This is the coup de grace of Tom Hanks' performances right here. He steals the show and literally it shows how good of an actor this guy is. I mean, that's what everybody says about this movie. And seriously, he makes you feel sympathetic for his relationship with the volleyball because he reflects it back on his own humanity. And the wonderful scene in here where he learns how to make fire, he learns how to scrape off the ground and live within the elements, and basic elements of survival have to be relearned again by this person who has been cast back into the elements. Now, before we reviewed the movie Titanic, and Titanic has a similar theme at the end when we see the civilization, the ship, being swallowed up by the sea at the end of the Titanic. We have a similar scene in the movie Castaway. We have the scene when the plane is basically going down, not really through any fault in technology, and just a fault through the elements. I believe the plane hits a turbulence and a hurricane, and it crashes on this uncharted island, that could be like twice the size of Texas, and basically could have been anywhere that this plane could have landed. So it's impossible to find it. And it just the amount of money and resources that would go towards finding Tom Hanks are just out of the question. They try as hard as they can, but at a certain point, Tom Hanks' family pronounces him dead, and he's stuck on this island, you see. And to some of us, it might seem like a tropical paradise at first, at the island, but the isolation and the survival element of it all, and the fact that he doesn't really want to be there, all these things play an important factor. So one thing that we need to take into deep consideration when watching Castaway is, of course, the element and the aspect of this film, which is key to the entire thing. He was a UPS worker, or a FedEx worker. He was a FedEx worker, so his job, and which to his own benefit, because if he didn't have some of those packages, then they wouldn't have helped him. Basically, the cargo on the plane was a bunch of packages from FedEx trips. So he gets a few life hacks. He gets like the ice skates play a big role. He gets, the clothing and all these other things that are able to help him make fishing nets. So he does get a few leftover remnants from society. And then this does also have a lot of parallels with the other movie that we watched, the Road Warrior with Mel Gibson, which basically shows us what a person has to do to scavenge the leftover remains and use the technology and the innovation that was made available by the old world in order to try to sustain yourself when you're trying to contest with the elements. So he draws upon all the knowledge that he has, and he was a very relatively well-read man. He was the character who gets cast away into this situation really is like the man for the job as far as like a a spoiled Westerner goes, and somebody who, has been living indoors all their life. He goes and he has to live on the beach, and at least he lives in a tropical climate, so a few things actually do work to his benefit. And then they set up the key point to this movie. He makes various attempts to escape early on, which result in him becoming injured. And he goes through, and then eventually he goes through the various stages of denial, which lead to acceptance. And acceptance is essentially when he learns how to fish. He starts talking to the volleyball, because we're going to talk very extensively about the scene where he gets introduced to the volleyball. When we actually meet Wilson, because that is the key part of the philosophical underpin of this movie. See, the movie's not about him missing his girlfriend or his wife going off and getting married to another guy after he gets pronounced dead, and then him living cast away as a just sort of forgotten person. That movie, that's happening all in the background. The movie is about the inner struggle of a person to overcome the philosophy, overcome their own purpose of living, when there's nothing outside of them that's giving them feedback. We know ourselves through the people around us. And what Wilson represents to Tom Hanks is the eternal witness. If people hadn't witnessed your wedding, how important really would it be to you? I mean, some people have weddings in private just because of that same reason or for various different motivations. But for the most part, the average person knows themselves through the people around them. That's why your family and friends come to your graduation. That's why you talk to your friends. And that's why you go on social media. That's why you look at what people are doing and post things on social media, because we all want to feel like we exist. And that's what Tom Hanks' struggle. That's the main underpinning of the movie Castaway. So we are given this character who has basic rudimentary tools for survival made available to him by these FedEx things and stuff like that. That was the first time we saw Wilson, by the way. He just threw the ball, while he's going through the packages. And then this also right here is hope. This package right here with the angel wings on it. He takes that package very seriously. He has the ice skates there. He's able to use the bubble wrap to cure his wounds and make a tent using the leftover remnants of the survival cargo made available by the airplane that dropped. He hunts crabs. He creates spears using the ice skates to sharpen it. He goes through the various motions of learning how to adapt to his environment. And he's like a child cast out into the cold. He has to go figure out how to contend with himself, adapt or die. But no, this is a very relatively adaptable man. I mean, he was used to like the turmoil of being a FedEx worker was a lot for him to, I'm sure he's used to being under stress, meeting deadlines and all these other things. So he is sort of like our best man. So he's also the last man. I mean, this is a depiction of a last man character. You could imagine that somewhere off on the other side of the world, everything in society went to hell and there was some sort of world ending event. And then Tom Hanks just lives on this island still and has no idea that everybody that he knew was dead. I mean, that possibly, if this movie ended without Tom Hanks returning to society, then we would be open to make those assumptions. But the movie does show us him going back to society because he does rescue himself. Basically, at the end of the movie, he creates his own life raft because he uses what comes to him through the waves in the form of other debris. He gets a porta potty, which works as a great sail, and he sails far enough out into the middle of the ocean so that an oil rig can. So this is him making fire, which is of course him conquering the elements and all those things. And Wilson was there watching him make the fire, so that's where he starts to develop his special bond to the volleyball, which he names Wilson, who eventually becomes his only friend on the island. And that's also why it's so emotionally hitting at the end when he loses Wilson, because Wilson on the island was the only means through which Tom Hanks' character was able to know himself. He's talking to Wilson, he's explaining to him where he's from, the possibility of him and Wilson are now in this together, which is a really hard, because he doesn't go insane. This isn't a movie about a guy going off on a plane and falling victim to insanity. No, it's like he doesn't have TV, he doesn't have his social media or whatever. I mean, this is 2001, but still, he doesn't have any means to know himself, so he's writing on walls, he needs to talk, you need to continue to talk. You need to hear your own voice. So he's actually a genius in that sense, that he uses the ball as a way for him to sort of spiritually capture, and also probably as a reference for his memory. I mean, if you every time you try to remember something, you're looking at Wilson and you're talking to Wilson, it's actually a lot different. So here is the scene where he has to be his own dentist. So he hits the dentist, he knocks his own teeth out. It's a bunch of pain, and now we have the time passes by, 4 years later, and we have Tom Hanks. He's a fisherman now. His beard has grown in. He's just sort of gotten used to it. He's basically caveman mode now, which is now he's no longer like the clean shaven. Basically that's his character arc right there. He looks more like the island. The whole the tapestry and the various different inner workings of how he had to survive on the island. All that eventually led him to this. I mean, the island converged with him, much the same way at the end of the Titanic when the elements take hold of the ship and suck the people down to the Arctic. Those people become icebergs in and of themselves. The elements basically take hold and win and then assimilate people into them. So he's become Jungle Man. He's become Jungle Man on here, and that's because you are your environment. Much the same way we're all reflections of our environment, living indoors and such. He and the people like Tom Hanks who get cast out into the elements and have to become cavemen. People who get sucked down to the bottom of the Atlantic become icebergs. So I mean, that is actually a very humbling thought when you consider the power of nature that we're all sort of guest to. So here he is, he found his sail, and he's looking at it, and he's realizing that it can catch the wind, right? The wind knocks it down. He's like, that could work. He's learned how to think. He's learned how to think on his feet and meet deadlines. And he's studied the patterns of the ocean at this point. And he's done it all with his best buddy Wilson, just talking to the volleyball. And he's created fire. Him and his buddy discovered fire together. And now it's time for them to get out, return back to society, maybe play a volleyball game. And it's never alluded to that he was any sort of volleyball fan too, which is sort of funny. He just talks to the ball and names it Wilson, and it just sort of works. I mean, it's much like any relationship we develop in life, isn't it? You don't always expect to become friends with a certain person. You don't always expect to be spending 10 years of your life on an island talking to a volleyball while trying to escape back to society. So I mean, and you got to hand it to this character. I mean, he doesn't get an infection in his leg that makes him fall off of, or whatever. It did nothing like that happens. He's a straightforward. He meets his deadlines. He's a hard worker, and he gets himself back to society, and he's building his own life raft. And that's a very commendable act to do. And the fact that so he uses all the resources available to him at his disposal to accomplish this great act of redeeming himself and earning his place back to society. Even though back at home his wife has left him, his wife has already moved on. His wife is already, and yet now over here he has to redeem the rope that he was originally going to use to hang himself, which is also something that's, there's the little dummy that he was going to use to test it and all that. Which shows you the depths of despair that Tom Hanks was going through while he was trapped on this island. So here we are, he's gearing up for it, and he's got, him and Wilson are going to go for it now. I mean, this hasn't worked before, but hell, what's he going to do? Is he just going to sit on the island for the rest of his life talking to a volleyball, as he famously said? I know plenty of people who would love to be on a deserted island by themselves and just talk to Wilson. But he wants to return to society. He wants the redemption arc. It's his odyssey. And what else would you be focusing your attention on while you were living there, if not returning? It's like he doesn't want to just accept his predicament and live on the island. He wants to return to Kelly. His wife's name's Kelly in this movie. So it's interesting. Yeah, he lost Wilson, and then he finds Wilson. He argues with Wilson. It really shows you he's putting everything he can into, the various different, because it's his own life is on the line. So when he's talking to the volleyball, it's not a joke. People like to joke about this movie and say like, oh, it's a movie about a guy on a deserted island talking to a ball. And yes, that's what it looks like. But in reality, it's a movie about finding yourself in the darkest place. I mean, he was a FedEx worker. He was around people all the time. time. He wants to be around his people, and he's going to go back to his people, or he's going to die trying. And he brings his friend, and he makes friends along with it. So it's a real commendable character, that we have here. And he even paints the wings of the one package that he doesn't open for the entire time. It could have been a radio in there, but he doesn't open it. There's one last package that he never opened from all the FedEx things. You know why? Because that's what he holds over from his identity as a FedEx worker. This man was such a dedicated FedEx worker that he didn't even open one of the packages that could have saved his life during the entire time that he was trapped on this island. Number one, because it gave him hope. It gave him hope for like what was actually in this package with the angel wings. But number two, he doesn't want to lose that aspect of himself and become a complete savage and surrender himself to the island. So here we are, and it's the most critical point of the movie. Tom Hanks is finally going for it. He's finally going to try to escape the island. He's got his buddy Wilson with him. He's got the volleyball with him, and it's time to go. It's do or die, much to do or die or whatever type of thing. So let's go, Tom Hanks. He's got his buddy up there on the, front and center on the mast, and he's rowing, and the waves are hitting him, and he's mapped this entire thing out for 10 years. He's got the sail is ready to be deployed at just the right moment, which was brought to him by fate, by having faith in the tide. And wow, he actually does it. Oh, what a great moment. What a great moment in film when Tom Hanks conquers the elements, finally scavenging together what he can. And, and honestly, he's moving himself out there into a side of the world that's the unknown. It's a copyrighted video. Temporarily blocked. Yeah. All right. Well, it's just copyrighted video. Dude, I'm fucking trying to talk about the movie here, It's like, how the hell are you supposed to talk about a movie without the damn... I just got like a notification that my stream is got some... Anyway, so what you guys are watching right now, we're going to finish this. He's figuring out how to get water, he's overcoming dehydration. Now it's nighttime, and, he's out here, and he's trying to survive, man. What a great film. What a great backdrop, too. So there's the whale that comes up that's, the most intelligent creature in the ocean, arguably, comes up and just wants to check him out, just wants to see what he's doing. And then it's and then you think, whales have telepathic powers and all that people have read into with this film. But right here we have the most... okay, so there's the hurricane, and Wilson even stands through the hurricane. I mean, you got to think this guy had battened down the hatches. I mean, he survives the elements. I mean, he chose this over his cozy island because he wanted to return back to society. In a sense, he needed to find himself in society. He needed to find the various different elements of his humanity. But there goes Wilson just by fate. Fate again, Wilson now, and he, the whale is trying to let him know. I think that's the whale's, that's what that little bit of water is there. It's go look, your buddy is, or that was the same sound effect and the same, way when the whale originally hit him. But it's interesting that that's what wakes him up. We don't actually see the whale, but then here he is, and there's Wilson, and this honestly right here is worth watching. It's this is the scene where he's trying to get Wilson. We're going to have to fast forward right to it because I don't want this to be copyrighted or whatever. But he's this is the scene. He's trying to get his ball. And he's I can't get it. You know what I mean? He's struggling to get Wilson back, because Wilson, remember, is the way that he knew himself on the island. That's the way that he knew himself through, and then the theme song kicks in, and then because all of us can really relate to the fact that you only know yourself through the people who are around you, and that's what Tom Hanks is going through right now. He on that island, the only person he had to talk to was Wilson, which was a reflection of himself. That was the person who was with him when he discovered fire. And all the whole time when he was trying to survive on the island, all he had to do was talk to that volleyball. And when the volleyball is floating away, imagine that. That's when you're a kid and he's apologizing. You know what I mean? It's it's just it's heart wrenching, because it's you know, that it's Western civilization. You know, he's cast out into the elements, and this is the critical point of the movie right here. I mean, this right here is Castaway. That scene when he creates fire, and then this scene again when him and Wilson part ways, and you know that's what happens in life. You know, you lose you lose contact with the people who and then you have to learn how to find yourself again. You know, but it's sad because he gives up on life after this, and I mean, from here on, that's the end of Castaway. I mean, you get you know, he loses the ball, and then he gets picked up by you know, an oil ship or whatever who bring him back to reality, and then he finds out from his you know, friends and family that he had been declared dead, you know, and that they gave up on the search party for him, and that there was nothing that they could do because it was just costing too much money to look for him. They buried him. And they had a funeral for him while he was away on the island. And and he comes back and he's like, "What did you put in it?" And they're like, "Well, we put some of your favorite CDs, you know, we put some of your blah, 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 blah." But, you know, it's like one of those, man, but he makes it. He goes back. He finds out that his wife is, you know, married to a new guy. Actually, ironically, his wife marries a guy who was his name's Spalding, which is the opposite company that makes volleyballs as the Wilson company, which is kind of funny. And then the Spalding doctor is actually a dentist, and it was supposed to be Tom Hanks' dentist. And Tom Hanks' dentist is Tom Hanks was on the island suffering with his rotting tooth. So it's like she marries a dentist while he's on a ship. Well, he's on an island with a rotting tooth, talking to a volleyball named Wilson, and back home his wife's marrying a guy named Spalding. There's a lot of irony to be unpacked there. But anyway, yeah, the movie ends with a fork in the road. He delivers the one package that he had, that one package that was with him throughout the entire time that he was on the island. He returns that to the people. I think from now on I'm going to play the movies in reverse, because I think when you play them and fast forward, they just think that you're streaming the movie or something. But yeah, but anyway, yeah, so that's Castaway though. Yeah, Tom Hanks. He's I mean he was a FedEx worker. He you know, fate threw him to the island, and then he figured out how to survive, and you know, and hats off to him, because a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that in that type of situation. Really, very classic film. And thanks for watching, everybody.